What's up, everybody, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Juicy Jet Podcast. My name is Kevin Rooney. I'm going to be your host, and I'm really excited to be finally doing this. I've been diving into Jets content a little bit over the past couple months, and every single day, every morning on my way to work, whether I've got some downtime in between meetings, I am listening to Jets podcasts, watching YouTube videos of other Jets fans talking about the team, and I thought it was finally time for me to take the dive right in. So what I want to do in this first ever episode is talk a little bit about, number one, who am I? Why am I talking about the Jets? Why do I care so much about this? Number two, talk a little bit about what's to come in future episodes of a show like this. And then number three, talk about how we got here, because we are in the depths of a GM and head coaching search right now, once again. And why are we here? What the heck happened? So let's dive right in. First of all, my name is Kevin Rooney. I am a lifelong New York Jets fan. Been a Jets fan since birth. It is all my dad's fault. So you can go ahead and blame him for all the misery and torture that this team has brought me. But on the good side of it, it has also brought me lifelong connections, experiences. I have traveled in pretty much the globe watching the New York Jets play football and unfortunately lose in a lot of football games. I think one thing that stands out about me as a Jets fan is you're not going to find anyone who has been to more New York Jets games in the past 2 years than I have. I've been to every single home and away game over the past 2 years, which includes me being to more games than our starting quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. I've been to more games than our number 2 overall pick, Zach Wilson, in the past 2 years. I've been to more games than our head coach, Robert Saleh, in the past 2 years. I've been to more games than our GM, Joe Douglas, in the past 2 years. So I've seen a lot of losing. I know what's going on here. I've been going to games since I was a young kid because my dad has brought me. And luckily I've been able to travel, and my ultimate goal is to see the Jets play in every single stadium in the U.S. and beyond. I went to London last year. So it's been a really exciting 2 years in terms of all the traveling and trips that I've done, and I'm going to dive into those in future episodes, talk about some of my favorite places to be, favorite stadiums, fans that are the best and the worst. But it's been a wild ride, even though we won 5 games this year, 7 games last year, 14 years with no playoffs. It's been a decade since we've won more than 7 games, so it's been a wild ride, but it was a fun 2 years, and I want to share those experiences with everybody who potentially hopes to go to games and get out of MetLife Stadium a little bit and expand to some of these other cities. So that's a little bit about me. I am also here to vent. I'm here to celebrate the few times that we do win, and overall just to connect on all things Jets. So hopefully this is going to be a new home for me, and I'll have some people maybe interacting eventually because I'm excited to dive right in. So let's unpack the New York Jets and where we're at right now. Let's talk about why we're here, what happened over the past couple years to get us in the place that we're in. Because if you just think about it, 2 years ago, we were literally walking into MetLife Stadium with we have a Super Bowl MVP, 4-time NFL MVP, Aaron Rodgers as our quarterback, wearing a Jets uniform, playing against the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football on 9/11 in front of the entire world. And then it was all downhill from there. We saw 4 plays, Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, and the team just has not been able to recover from that entire situation. So let's start. How did this all happen? We got to talk about Woody Johnson first. Because over the past 25 years, there's been one person who has been in the organization as the head honcho that has led to this 14 years of no playoffs, and it's Woody Johnson. Now, I will say when it started off, Woody was gone. He was over in the UK. What was this? This was when Joe Douglas was first. Well, Adam Gase was originally hired. His brother took over, Christopher. Woody was in the UK as the ambassador under the Trump administration. So he wasn't really around, and a lot of the losing, the really bad losing with Adam Gase was starting then. And that's when, in the middle of the draft was over, we decided to fire Mike McCagnon, and Joe Douglas comes in. And it was universally loved by everybody. You know, he signs a 6-year deal, and he's going to be the guy. We've got people like Ian Rappaport talking all about him. We've got people all over ESPN saying how this is a home run hire for the Jets. But we hire him in a weird time. I don't even remember how much interviewing we did during that time. So Woody decides to hire Joe Douglas and lets him do his thing. Now, Joe Douglas had 6 years. Everyone always says Woody Johnson is not a patient owner. He's always meddling. Woody Johnson gave him 5 years to start winning, and he didn't win. He's messed up too many draft picks. What other GMs out there get a shot with a top 3 pick, Sam Darnold, to help revive his career, then get another shot with a top 2 pick in Zach Wilson, and then get another shot with a 4-time NFL MVP, Aaron Rodgers, and still doesn't win? So at some point, you got to give some credit to Woody and say he was patient, he waited, and then look at Joe Douglas and say he didn't win. He did a bad job. And when you look at Joe Douglas overall, I was a big fan of Joe Douglas when he first got here, but after 5 years, it got old, the losing, and the almost Jets that we had. Some of his signings were not great. You look at guys like Jared Davis was not good. You look at guys like this Hassan Reddick situation was awful. You look at guys like Javon Kinlaw did not work out. You look at his draft classes. Mekhi Becton going over Tristan Wirfs. That's going to be one of the bigger ones. Completely whiffed on one of the biggest busts in NFL history, Zach Wilson. And who knows, maybe he'll turn into one of these other quarterbacks that used to play for the Jets that revived their career, like a Sam Darnold, like a Geno Smith. But it's not looking like it's anytime soon. So, man, he had a lot of swings. Denzel Mims didn't work out. Malachi Corley, we just drafted this year, he couldn't even get on the field. He only signed 2 players from his draft classes to contract extensions, one being Ashton Davis to a 1-year deal to be a backup safety, and then 2, and I think this was well-deserved, Michael Carter. Michael Carter, the cornerback. Of course, Michael Carter, the running back, we just cut out of nowhere. And I also think there was some poor roster management. You know, you look at the D-line. He completely decimated the strength of this team, which was the D-line. You know, you let Franklin Myers go for Hassan Reddick. You get rid of guys like Quentin Jefferson, who had a great year with us. You get rid of Sheldon Rankins, who had a great year with us. And now we're stuck with Javon Kinlaw. We're stuck with Michael Clemens. We're stuck with, and I mean, these guys they seem like great guys, and I know they worked with Saleh in the past, but man, it's Solomon Thomas is another one where really good 5th lineman, maybe 5th D tackle, not your number 2. So Joe Douglas just didn't get the job done when it came to roster building, and I think just overall draft and free agencies, it just didn't work out. Then the next piece is Robert Saleh. Robert Saleh was also universally loved as a Jets coach when we first brought him on board. The reason for that is he's this fiery defensive coordinator coming from San Francisco, a really successful organization. We're going to pull a bunch of players from that team. We're going to pull a bunch of coaches. And it actually started off okay. Like, I loved the bringing on LaFleur to be the offensive coordinator. I thought Ulbrich had a rocky start, but then settled down in his role. But I don't know what happened to Robert Saleh, but he lost that fire. He came here and was just stoic on the sidelines. We kept making the same mistakes on both offense and defense, penalties galore. All we talked about was how great we did in practice, and it didn't lead to winning. So once again, we gave Saleh 3.5 years, and he couldn't do it. Couldn't get us over the hump of 7 wins. So with that, they're both fired. And now I stand by the fact that Woody should have fired Robert Saleh, but he did it too late. He should have did it this past offseason. And now we were stuck in the middle of the season with absolutely no coaching at all. Ulbrich was way in over his head. And we couldn't win. It was just disaster after disaster when it came down to the end of the games, when no one knew how to manage the clock. We couldn't kick a field goal to save our lives. We'd commit a bad penalty when we scored. It was really rough to watch, and sad to see Aaron Rodgers like that. He's a guy that I was obviously rooting for. He's one of my favorite players of all time, and to see him on the Jets was so exciting. And then he just hasn't been the same since hurting that Achilles. So that's how we got here. So now we're in a place where we're looking for a new GM. We're looking for a new head coach. As I'm recording this, it looks like Aaron Glenn is going to be the head coach. We are still waiting to see what's happening here. It looks like Lance Newark is going to be our GM. but nothing's been signed yet, so we don't know. So we'll talk more about what those signings are going to look like if we bring those two on board. But it sounds like they left the facility tonight. Maybe their agents are hashing out a deal, but we'll see how it goes. But from my perspective, what this next coach and GM are going to have to do, number one, address Garrett Wilson, make sure that he's all in. Garrett Wilson's got to be on this team long term because we have no other weapons. It's him and Brees, and then you got Sauce Gardner you got to deal with at corner. And I loved Will McDonald this year. Obviously, you got Quinnen. We're probably going to have to pay Quincy again, and we just don't have a ton of money. That whole offensive line is looking actually pretty decent now, so we'll see what a good coach can do. But we'll talk more about that as we move on. But really, my closing thoughts here, the Jets have some talent on this roster. I think we just need a competent head coach to come in here and set it all straight, hold people accountable, and then we got to draft well. I don't see us signing big-name players over this offseason and next offseason with all the money that we got tied up from Joe Douglas contracts. So we're going to have to do it with the talent that we got and find some value signings, and really lean on our draft picks. So we're going to try to do this probably every week. There'll probably be like more of an emergency podcast situation when we do hire somebody. But I'm excited to talk more about game recaps, diving into the offseason, seeing who we should bring on in free agency, seeing who we should draft. I'm already knee-deep in the draft, and I've been to a bunch of drafts over the past couple of years. So it's going to be really exciting. And I'm excited to hopefully interact with some Jets fans. I want to hear what Jets fans think, what their thoughts are, who deserves the most blame for where we're at. Obviously, Woody Johnson's not selling the team, so what are we doing there? But excited for the interaction to come. And I appreciate everybody listening to our first episode of the Juicy Jet Podcast. And hopefully we got some extra juice coming over the next couple days when we bring in a new head coach and a new GM. Talk to y'all soon.